Islamophobia first came up as a major topic of conversation in 1997 when the Runnymede report was published, which was called Islamophobia, a Challenge for Us All. But what we've seen in the last few years, since 9/11, since 7/7, and on today, we see that anti-Muslim hate crime is actually increasing and is becoming more of a concern. There are a number of ways in which I would say that Islamophobia is a really serious problem. The first is that people who display kind of an expression of being Muslim, perhaps wearing Islamic clothing, such as a hijab or a niqab, they get subjected to abuse simply from people who have far-right or anti-Muslim sympathies. They get subjected to verbal abuse on the street, in the public, as well as online. So online hate is actually another problem that we've looked into. So what we see is that it's in everyday life. Islamophobia is a problem. The way that hate works online becomes another serious problem there as well. So on Facebook and on Twitter, we see a lot of anti-Muslim sentiment as well. So the problem is very much real, and the problem I don't think is getting that much better. Now, what we've done with this graphic here is try to show that different types of media events actually have a different impact on the kind of spikes and levels of anti-Muslim hate crime. If you guys remember back in the summer of 2012, when the Innocence of Muslims film was released, which was and one of the big issues and one of the things that contributes to the increase is the way that the media reports about Muslims, because Muslims often come up in very negative lights. And so by framing Muslims around issues of terrorism, issues of cultural difference, issues of Muslims don't want to integrate, or even most radically that we've seen this summer, which was Muslims being behind child sexual exploitation in Rotherham, all of these things really kind of contribute back into Islamophobia. So part of the problem is the press, but a lot of the issue as well is the far right. And the far right, we would expect, of course, has racist kind of ideas. But what we've noticed is that on the far right, people are actually trying to bring themselves up as not racist, to say that the problem is not Asians, the problem is not foreigners, but really the problem is Muslims. And so this is something that we see with a new far right group called Britain First. And what Britain First did when the Rotherham scandal broke was that they very importantly said that the people behind the child sexual exploitation in Rotherham they were very careful to say they're not Asians, but rather they're Muslims. And so I think this is a really disturbing trend, because what they're doing is they're taking all Muslims and putting them into a box and then slapping a label on their criminal, fundamentalist, welfare scrounger, and in the most kind of disturbing way, associating all Muslims with child sexual exploitation, which is a completely ludicrous idea. But this is how Islamophobia, I think, is working in Britain today, and it seems to persist as a problem. A lot of people feel frustrated, feel very angry, and I think we have a lot of depression and anxiety that kind of comes out of that. So I think those are the main impacts. But also, it's when a community feels alienated, they don't feel like they're part of the society, and so it's everybody's responsibility across all faith groups, not just to make Muslims feel welcome. I think that's something that a lot of faiths in the UK already do, but to also take a hard stance against anti-Muslim hate. And that has to come through education, primarily through education, I would say, as well as kind of what Tell Mama does and what the police do, which is record the number of cases and understand what's going on. The police are doing a good job now, I think, moving forward. They're taking the first steps that need to be taken to start taking anti-Muslim hate crime more seriously. In London, we've seen that they've been recording Islamophobic hate crime as a separate crime flag. We just heard today that West Yorkshire Police will be doing the same thing as well, and there are a few other police forces around the country that are doing that. That's a really good step forward. Now, what happens is when we start looking at the big picture, though, when we want to look at the national picture, the Home Office doesn't necessarily look at anti-Muslim crime separately, but they do look at racist crime as a separate category. But anti-Semitic crime is broken out. So what I think personally is that anti-Muslim crime should be something that the Home Office is looking at specifically. That'll help us really understand the scale of the problem.